Hello everybody, my name's James and welcome to not the Gameweek26 Deadline stream, and it's live. Welcome to our podcast listeners who are able to listen this week to the audio version of the Deadline stream because it's not being recorded on YouTube during the deadline. I'm pretending it's a Friday night deadline. It's just gone 5:30 p.m. UK time. I'm going to answer FPL questions up until 6:30 p.m. UK time from the YouTube community as if it was the deadline stream, and then I'll do a few non-FPL questions to finish as well. I'm going to Wolves tomorrow, hence no deadline stream tomorrow because I've got an addiction and it's a problem and I admit to it and I'm here and I'm open about it, and yeah, I think we'll get beat tomorrow again anyway. Let me take you through the graphics. For the benefit of those on YouTube, because this is going out as an audio podcast as well, I probably will go a little bit slower than what I normally do on the actual deadline stream. But for the benefit of those on stream now, let me just take you through the graphics. So I'm gonna finish with my team on screen last for a change. Top 10 captaincy picks in order of preference. I do believe Bukayo Saka is the best choice this week. Then in order of preference goes Haaland, Martinelli, Odegaard, Rashford, Tony, Watkins, Fernandes, Salah and Kane. My correct score predictions for the 10 games in game week 26 are Man City to win 1-0, Arsenal 3-0, Villa 2-1, Brighton 1-0, Chelsea 2-0, yes, Wolves 1-0. I'm going for a Desmond 2-2 between Southampton and Leicester. The shock prediction, which will probably piss some off, is Everton to win 1-0 at Nottingham Forest, Manchester United to win 2-1 at Liverpool, Brentford to beat Fulham 2-1. Right at the bottom of the ticker, you will see the next 5 game week fixtures for all 20 teams. The FDR rating is taken from the FPL website. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. I absolutely agree that Arsenal away is a more difficult fixture than Chelsea away, but there you go. They haven't changed it for ages, even though their website does state that they change it every week. Above that, you'll see the benching dilemmas where there's 2 players together. The preferred choice is the player to start out of those 2. Pages 1 to 4 run through outfield players, and page 5 goalkeepers. I'll take you through them briefly now. So I would start Trent Alexander-Arnold over Mbumo, Mbumo over Mitoma, Mitoma over Trippier, Trippier over Dunk, he says, with Dunk over Trippier in his team, but that's my team, not yours. Dunk over Shaw, Shaw over Bailey, Bailey over Dawson, Dawson over Sarabia, Sarabia over Henry, Henry over Pereira, Pereira over Tarkowski, Tarkowski over Nico Williams, Williams over Nonto, Nonto over Iwobi, Iwobi over Ream, and Ream over Fabian Schär, who hasn't been photographed in Newcastle training. And the goalkeepers, Kepa over Sanchez, Sanchez over Pickford, Pickford over Raya, Raya over Ward. Now, the team on my screen will look very different to the YouTube viewers as to normal. You may note that it's a screenshot taken from FPL.team. The reason for that is I'm on Wildcard, and it would be really, really stupid for me to make the transfers just to make this stream look like it's from the official website, i.e. if I take the value out of Erling Haaland that I've currently got right now and then decide later tonight to keep him, that would be a bit daft, wouldn't it? So, on screen now is a draft, and this is not the confirmed team that I'm going to go with, but I will take you through it briefly. In goal, Kepa, a back 3 of Dunk, Gabriel, Tyrone Mings, midfield 4 of Saka, Odegaard, Maddison and Rashford. Up front, Harry Kane, Ollie Watkins, Ivan Toney. On the bench, Robert Sanchez, Alexis McAllister, Rico Henry and Kieran Trippier. A few of those players are definitely going in, there's no doubt about it. The big decision marks, I think, for me are around Tyrone Mings, Martin Odegaard and Harry Kane. Mings could be Botman, could be Chilwell, could be a couple of different alternatives. I don't think Rico Henry is a certainty for me either. Odegaard, flirting with a few different ideas. Emi Buendia, Harvey Barnes are a couple of players under consideration. Could be another Brighton attacker. I'll take out one of the defensive ones, so probably Mitoma over March would be my preference. And Harry Kane could be Erling Haaland, Callum Wilson, Dominic Solanke, or the one that I'm beginning to lean to the longer this day goes on is Kelechi Iheanacho, actually. So it is possible that I wildcard with neither Kane or Haaland. My intention is to go against Haaland. That's on the basis of I'm not going to captain him over the next 4 weeks. If I come to a conclusion later tonight, once I've got the time to properly sit down and look at my draft, that I definitely don't intend to captain Kane in 28. He may go for me as well. Because I think it's about thinking about future moves. So there is a high probability I'm going to leave a shitload of money in the bank. That draft's got about 5 million in the bank. The plan currently would be Tony to Haaland in game week 30 to get him back, and then build to Manchester City and probably Liverpool players from that point. Game week 29, it'd be getting Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw. I know that almost with certainty. Game week 28 would be left open as a luxury because I'm bound to make a mistake and roll in game week 27. That's kind of the plan. The final selection is not clarified. I need to sit down and properly look at it, and I'm not hiding my team from anybody. The patrons will know first tonight, and then tomorrow morning I will post the team on Twitter of what I'm going with, because when deadline hits I'm going to be on a train heading to Wolves, and I ain't going to be fucking about with FPL. I won't be thinking about it. My team will get locked in tonight, and that'll be the end of it, but it isn't finalised as yet. But a lot of those picks are definite in there. It won't be too far away from what's on screen. Right, let's get into the questions as posed by the YouTube community. Lewis Conley's first says, "Hi James, play one out of Mitoma or Nunes?" I'd play Nunes if I had, mate. Hollis Stamos says, "Hello James, Raya and Estupinan, but 9 players for 28, or Sanchez and Pinnock 10 in 28, but being forced to play double Brentford defence in all of the next 4 game weeks." That's not terrible. You got Fulham this week, obviously, haven't you? Then the double, which is fine, and it's a decent double. Southampton, Everton away. Leicester at home, 28 is fine. 29 is not a great double for them. Brighton and Manchester United away. I'd probably rather not have double. I'd certainly feel better about it if Raya is one of them, Holla. I wouldn't be keen on Pinnock and Henry, I think. But Raya and Pinnock or Henry, I think, is okay. So it sounds like from what you're doing there, Sanchez and Pinnock, that forces you to double Brentford. I'm not so keen. Sanchez, I think, is a probable for me. I would rather have Raya. It's just the fact that, therefore, I can bench exactly what you're saying. I can bench an extra Brighton player, therefore, in game week 28. Whereas if I go Raya and Kepa, I don't want them sitting on the bench, kind of wasting now. I'd probably go for the extra player, but I'd look at a different solution to double Brentford defence. There's loads, mate. Villa player, a Newcastle player. There's loads of different options. You want to gamble on a Chelsea player, possibly. But my thoughts on Chelsea defensively, I'd like to get a second one. Kepa's almost a definite for me. I'm kind of leaving that as maybe the luxury move in 28 once I've got a little bit more information. So I'll miss this weekend, miss Leicester away, and then perhaps invest in another one ahead of Everton at home. When I've got clarity, they've had a free midweek beforehand. It should be in a strong position, I think, at that point to pick James or Chilwell if I want to, rather than now. It just looks like I'm going to guess that Reece James probably isn't going to play tomorrow. And to be honest, I had a preference for the patrons will know this. The draft I spoke through this morning had Chilwell in it. So I had a preference over Chilwell over James anyway, based on what I saw at White Hart Lane last week. Instead of Reece James's position, it's just way too deep at the moment. It's not the Reece James that we want him to be from an FPL perspective. But I think I'm going to bottle it at the moment. All the advice that our patrons are giving on Chelsea players is Kepa and nothing else, as you well know, Holla. So I want to come back to that. I think if it was me, I'd probably go the Sanchez Pinnock route, but I'd find a different Brentford defensive solution. Ethan says, "Wicked chip pod as usual. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. I'm unsure whether to wildcard now or wait till 28. Can get to 5 double game weekers in 27 with triple Liverpool versus Bournemouth. Only reason I can see to wildcard now would be for Kane. Is it worth it? If that's what you think the reason is, mate, I wouldn't bother. Really, really wouldn't bother if that. I might not even go with Kane. It's not a certainty for me. The fixtures are great, right? Wolves away. I think it's probably a 2-pointer tomorrow, to be honest. Forest at home, Southampton away, Everton away. And the fact that those last 2 away from home shouldn't be off-putting. I could even go with him and end up bidding him in 29 anyway if I've got more clarity on assured minutes for Wilson or Iheanacho or something like that at that point. It's the Southampton game that swung it now. Do I want to captain him in that way? That's the big question I'm asking myself. And I did a little piece for advanced tier patrons, which I released about an hour ago, talking about setting up for game week 28 and being aware that a number of other people will free hit in 28, quite naturally. I'm trying to put myself in a position where I can compete against it. And obviously having Kane sitting there competes with it so much better. But in the draft I talked through there, it didn't have Kane, and I still felt it could compete with what three hitters were doing. If I had, say, Wilson there was the example I used earlier today. If Kane's what's forcing you to, I wouldn't bother, mate. You watched Tottenham on Wednesday night. I realised Kane didn't start, but he came on at 0-0. Stephen Moore says, hi James, thinking of Maddison over Rashford and Wildcard. Better fixture in 26, can bench in 27 and gets me 11 in 28. I'd sell Odegaard for Rashford in 29. Saka and 2 Brighton makes up the rest of the mid. Cheers. I must say, I'd not considered going without Marcus Rashford. And I think the main reason for that is next week. He's 27. Is that Southampton fixture? I'd ask you myself what I would do in the event that I've got Tony. I'll definitely go with Tony. What I'd do in the event that he got banned this week. What would I do? From a captaincy perspective next week. Do I go for a Brentford doubler or a Brighton doubler? Or do I literally just go Rashford at home with Southampton? And I might, if that was the case. And his EO is going to be massive next week as well. Not that, listen, go without Haaland's obviously going to be massive this week, for example. And I'm sure the same next week and even in 29, for example. No, I've not really considered the idea of going without Rashford. Certainly works from a value perspective. Stephen, certainly works from that perspective. But it would be a no for me. It's also influenced by the value, right? I bought him at 6.5 or 6.6, something like that. So I 100% want him back. So no, Rashford for me would go in from the start. He's one of the ones I really wouldn't want to do without. More than Haaland, to be honest, right now. More than Haaland right now. Works is it'd probably be my captain 29 as well, I should imagine. As it stands, not that would influence you. Works is, hi James, thoughts on Iheanacho versus Watkins for Haaland replacements for Gameweek 28-29. Well, at that point, it probably comes down to your confidence in Iheanacho, I think, because I think his double in 29 of Palace and Villa is better than Watkins of Chelsea and Leicester, I think. So if you had the confidence in Iheanacho, my concern with Iheanacho for 29. And I think it's the big reason why I'm being put off is I know that the player I want to go for in that position, if it's not Kane, is a player that I certainly want for 29. And I just look at the fact that they play Palace on the Saturday and Villa on the Tuesday and think, I can see Rodgers leaving him out for one of them. Watkins will play both. There's not much doubt about it. Clear talisman for Villa going forward. It's probably Watkins, mate. Better fixture 28 as well. Mike says, hi James, which chip would you rather still have after game week 29, regardless of what points you would have got from them in this period? That's a very, very good question. What chip would I like to have most after game week 29? So it depends. You could sit either way on that. I could say free hit to cover 32 because I won't be sitting good for 32, even if it's still 8 fixtures. I'll be sitting badly for, let's say, United and Chelsea and Brighton and Manchester City is postponed. Those are the only 2 fixtures postponed. I'm likely to be in a position where I've got 3 United, 3 Brighton, at least 1 Chelsea and Haaland, if not 2, because I might even go Haaland 30, Foden 31 is part of my possible idea at the moment. So I'd be in such bad shape for 32 under that strategy if those 2 games were postponed. But then the flip of it, you could say, could I work towards 32 if I set this up differently and perhaps invest more in, say, Liverpool, for example, hold on to Arsenal players, and then wildcard afterwards? It's a really good question. It would certainly be wildcard or free hit. I think with my plan in mind, I'd actually probably still rather have the free hit, I think. Because I know that I can manipulate this to the players that I want from 34 onwards, who then, exactly what's spoken about, already coming out of 29 and straight away manipulating towards City and possibly Liverpool players from that point. Like Luis Diaz is so on my radar for that period. He ain't played for like 3 months, but he should be alright by the time the end of April comes around, I'm imagining. And it'd be a good price that's quite interesting, that would work quite nicely as perhaps a replacement for Maddison, for example, at that point that Liverpool may double in 34. These are the sort of things already going through my mind. So I think a free hit still for 32 would probably be the right solution for me. But there's bias based on what the current thinking is. Good question, like that. Cyrus Bernard says, hi James, thanks for the third chip podcast. Settled on Wildcard 26. What 3 players in double game week 29 are going under the radar that at admittance? And I saw a comment from one of our patrons just before I started on Slack about not wanting to be too close to the template. I've got a feel of what it is, but I haven't even looked really at other people's teams or what they're doing. I don't really want to. I imagine they're not going to fall a million miles away from the sort of thing that I'm looking at, to be totally honest. I imagine if I go no Haaland, no Kane, that's going to be different to a lot of people, I should imagine. So I think it's probably forward players, because I think Tony's liable to go in, and I think people were already thinking about Watkins. So Ian Acho I've mentioned, I think is one. I think Callum Wilson might be another. Dominic Solanke could be another one. Harvey Barnes of Leicester is a name I've mentioned already, who I think could be a name to throw in there. Perhaps Ben Chilwell of Chelsea, but it's really, really punty at the moment. So maybe some of the forwards possibly. FPL Maldini says, howdy James, who is the most nailed Forest defender, considering one this week as a 1 week punt before wildcarding? Well, Loddy is a doubt, so avoid that. Toffolo will probably come in for him, and Cooper didn't rule out Aurea either. Obviously, if Aurea's out, Nico Williams will play. That's murky. So of the centre-backs, probably say go Felipe, to be honest. Hasselbank's win says, how big is the Leeds game for Graham Potter tomorrow? Defeat and he's a dead man walking. 0 improvement since he took over in September. If they lose tomorrow, they won't sack him. Not 3 days before Dortmund. They'll let him do Dortmund. If he loses tomorrow and loses to Dortmund, yeah, I think they'll probably sack him. But they won't react to that. So they could lose tomorrow, and then if they perform really well on Tuesday, they'll probably put all their eggs in the Champions League and just ain't asked about the league. I should imagine that'd be, particularly if they got a good draw as well. So he used to go through these really long periods with Brighton. I used to talk about it a lot with Sam Murray, FPL Seagull, about like how do you avoid having these periods where they used to do it like at least once every year, would it go like 10 games without a win. Now at Brighton, okay, you recover. It's unacceptable for a Chelsea team to go 10 games without a win. Why does it happen? And was it 3 wins in 17 all comps? I mean, it's fucking bad, isn't it? But if they lose tomorrow, they won't sack him. He'll get Dortmund. Then if Dortmund goes bad, yeah, he's finished. Joe Cordy says, if Brighton versus Newcastle gets put in, just to say, I see it's a strategy question. If anybody's got any strategy questions off the back of yesterday, you know, in terms of thinking ahead, please do ask them. That'd be good. Joe Corley says, if Brighton versus Newcastle gets put in 30/31, when do you think it's likely announced? So one of the reasons to think 31 over 30, I mentioned yesterday on the chip pod about the spacing being better, but one of the things I should have also mentioned is time, because I think it'll probably be announced during the international break. And the reason for that, quite simply, is a little bit what I spoke about on the chip strategy pod of, if Manchester City or Manchester United go out of Europe, it opens up the possibility for Brighton to play one of those two teams in that midweek, whether it be 30/31 or even later in the season, rather than Newcastle. At the moment, it's got to be Newcastle. Now, interestingly, me and Ben Crellin were having a little bit of back and forth about this when I was going to the game Wednesday night, and I had to cut him a bit short because I was going in the ground. But Ben was saying with the idea of like, if one of United or City went out of Europe, perhaps that will go into that period rather than, say, the Newcastle game, because BT Sport have the Newcastle game and don't want it to clash with their own European coverage. And I completely get that. I think my take would be, at the moment, though, there's every chance that Man City will be the only English team left in the Champions League. We have to see that's a possibility. Liverpool are likely to go out. Chelsea and Tottenham are both losing, probably 40/60/50/50. But it could be City are the only English team in the Champions League. Now, if that happens, that means during that 30 and 31 period, then we've got one night, where Tuesday or the Wednesday, there's not going to be an English team playing. At that point, I think they'd be quite happy then to say, yeah, okay, fine. We'll give people a choice. Newcastle v Brighton or Champions League games involving non-English teams. And that seems more likely scenario right now than City or United going out. It doesn't mean, by the way, if Chelsea and Tottenham go through, that it won't be 30/31. I think it probably still will be. I think 31 is the most likely. Obviously, 32 can't happen now. Thing is, if they wait till after, towards the semi-final period, then you're looking at a period where Brighton will double 34 and 37 and one of 35 or 36. And the Premier League throughout this season have seemed really keen to get teams to catch up fixtures, which is another reason why I'm surprised I didn't wait to put Man City and West Ham in game week 29. But yeah, I think 31 is the most likely. And I think the announcement is not good. I can't see it being before the end of City's game and United's game in Europe. So that's United's game is the Thursday before game week 28. So you're looking at literally for it to be before the 28 deadline within 24 hours. I don't think it will be. They announced the game week 35 TV picks the next midweek. I think it'll probably be then. What No Graphics says, hello James, would you rather have Kane and Bruno Fernandes now or hold Salah for Bournemouth? Can't do both because of funds. I'm really not bothered about holding Salah for Bournemouth, to tell you the truth. Not particularly. Antonino Gitter says, hey James, hope you are well. I'm definitely well Kai next week. So which move is best for this week, do you think? Salah to Mitoma or Kilman to Worrell/Rico Henry? Very tempted to play Kilman. I've just backed him for a clean sheet, mate. So would I move Salah to Mitoma though? It's got to be a better release of the money. Should not rather have a punt on something like Sterling for this week? Or I'm going to guess you've already got 3 Arsenal players. I think I'd be more keen to do that, like punt on a Sterling. If it's just 1 week, you can get rid of it if it's wrong. I'd probably go down that route. From your options, I'd go Mitoma. Simon Kurtz says, thoughts on Chilwell ahead of a Brighton defender to bring in Sanchez and have 11 in game with 28. Also, any other alternatives you like? Yeah, there's loads. I kind of covered it near the start, Simon, but I think there's loads in that budget area. You've got Mings, Matty Cash, you've got Botman at Newcastle. Share if you want to play a little bit more. Even Forest defenders, their run's not too bad. They do double in 29. All the Leeds defenders are 4.5 if that takes your fancy. There's loads. I think I need a bit more Chelsea information at the moment would be my take. And he does pair up quite nicely with Kepa, as I said yesterday on the podcast. Reader Ericsson says, hi James, what is your long-term plan for Brighton assets? Easier to start and keep Sanchez, Estupiñán and a midfielder compared to 2 midfielders and Raya after these double game weeks. Maddison instead of 1 mid. Yeah, you can probably see from my setup that's what I've leaned towards. So I think that will probably be my 3 is probably Sanchez, Dunk and McAllister. Though I will give some more thought to Estupiñán now that De Zerbi said he's fit. The chances are those 3 Brighton players stay for the whole season. Just thinking about it, and this is where overloading and having goalkeeper I think helps with 28. So I go to the 3 Brighton that I've got there plus Rashford. That's my bench in 28. I have 11. They've all got decent doubles. Brighton's 29 doubles decent. If the 31 double goes in, admittedly it's bad. It would be Chelsea away and Newcastle away, but it's another double. I'd play the players. And actually, you'd be more interested in having a goalkeeper like Sanchez than some of the outfield players maybe for that week. Then double 34, then double 37. And you can take your pick on when to play them or not. I mean, like towards the end of the season, they've got Everton at home 35, Southampton at home 37. They finish with Villa 38. This you can mix and match. If you find the right combinations, you can mix and match when you play them. You wouldn't force yourself into a position where you have to pick these players every week, I don't think. So the idea would be the 3 I go last till the end of the season, I think. I'm particularly conscious that obviously with McAllister, that's a bit dodgy because if McAllister plays where he played against Stoke, he's a bad choice. But I think he'll go back into a higher position tomorrow. And therefore I'm very interested based on the last couple of games of data with him playing in the 10 position. And I know not too many else are on him, so I kind of prefer that route. But I'm conscious that decision could be wrong. So it might be I get to 28 and go, no, I got this wrong. I need to sacrifice McAllister for, I don't know, say Emi Buendia at a similar price, for example. Or a Harvey Barnes for a bit more. I'll have the money in the bank. And then come back round for the 3rd Brighton player, maybe for 31. That might be what I have to do if I get the decision wrong. But the idea, to be honest, would be stay there all season, mate. Constantina says, hey James, are you going for Brighton 3 up? And is Raya being a better FPL keeper worth going over Sanchez and so potentially 10 for 28? Thank you for the question. I've literally just answered it, mate, but thank you for the question. I am anything that's repetitive, guys, I am just going to skip because particularly this is obviously going out as an audio podcast as well. John Manfield says, hi James, who do you think is the best Arsenal midfielder for 1 week against Bournemouth? I plan to move them on for McAllister next week, leaning very closely towards Trossard as he's low owned. Yeah, don't mind that. I mean, if you ask me for the best, say Saka. Trossard has a risk element to it. Maybe we don't believe Arteta's words and maybe Nketiah will start. We don't know, for example. But yeah, I don't mind that. I think, to be honest, my order of preference for this week would probably be Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Trossard, just because of the small doubt on Trossard. Simon Smith says, how nailed is Pinnock a gamble on Wildcard? I believe he started every game since around about Gameweek 8. So, should be pretty safe, to be totally honest. I'd be surprised. I think you'll be okay going with him. Personally, I'd prefer 0.1 more for Rico Henry, personally. Sweet Blue says, hi James, hope all is well. Do you think about the fact that likes of Verstappen and McAllister and Mitoma have internationals in distant time zones 3 days before a bench boost game with 29, or is that overthinking it? Someone did mention it to me on Twitter and I said, can you do the investigating? And I saw Argentina were playing on the Tuesday night against Curacao, which I don't know, would that be a friendly? Can't be a qualifier, surely. So is that a friendly? Where's it being played? That might be quite important. So I will investigate that tonight, to be totally honest. My instinct would be that maybe going those 3 players is quite dangerous, but then if all the fixtures are being played in Europe, it's no different to having any international players, is it? So make of it what you will. I'd say do the research. Where's the games being played? Look into it properly. What time's the kickoffs? Is Tuesday night actually 3 o'clock in the morning on the Wednesday? Do they therefore not get back till Wednesday night? Then need a 24-hour break? Could it be that they're then a sub if they're playing on the Saturday? So yeah, look, do the right research. If it's that important, the only advice I can give people, if you're buying those players, I hadn't even thought about it with Estupiñán, so thank you for bringing it up. But I did with McAllister and Mitoma. And I don't have the answer because I need to look into it. Where are the games? Physically, where are they playing? Let's find it out. Ben Eddington says, hi mate, I'm a little surprised Evan Ferguson's name isn't being mentioned as much as the others. Yeah, I think it's a very reasonable take. I think, unfortunately, De Zerbi's comments on Danny Welbeck being in really good condition, quote, is quite off-putting. It certainly balances the attacking line a little bit better further on. But if you take someone like me, I don't want to spend weeks fretting about his minutes. I mean, I'd play him in 27. 29 is part of a bench boost. It'd be one of my weakest players. I'd be a bit concerned that's 1 point twice. That'd be the problem. I mean, generally speaking, a great asset. And it might even be something I come back to later on and go, well, I can either play him on this double or I can just keep benching him. It's Welbeck's fitness is key. If Welbeck was out, I think he'd be in for me, honestly. I wouldn't fret about it. I'd save all the money in the bank and use it elsewhere later on. But I think Welbeck being fit, yeah, is a bit off-putting at the moment, Ben. But if you really fancy it, crack on, mate. Stephen O'Brien says, hi, James. Would you think of Matty Cash as an option? I'd bench him in 27, but you'd start every week other than that. When you say every week, does that include Newcastle 31, Brentford 32, Man United 34? They've got a difficult run in. How long are you carrying him for? And you can bench him, of course, at the end of the season. I think you should be all right with Matty Cash. What has he got? One attacking return this season, which was the assist for Watkins against Arsenal, wasn't it? So, you know, he's put Watkins over the top 40 yards from goal. So actually his creativity levels, not what they were this time last year, where did he get, like 29 points? I think in Gameweek 26, wasn't it? Last season, I think, when he scored at Leeds. So he's not giving the same amount of output. It feels quite punty. Therefore, Mings is kind of just as big of a threat aerially at set pieces. I don't know. Lewis Rowland says, hi James, just wanted to say your pods get me through the week while I'm working. Keep up the great work and smash that like button, ladies and gents. Thank you very much, mate. Pup says, hi James, I'm still not set on a keeper for my wild card, considering De Gea but doesn't look popular amongst the Twitter bubble. Any ideas why? Yeah, with a blank 28. I think Twitter will, listen, if you want De Gea, go De Gea. I've had a spell of having De Gea, and he's done all right for me. but not quite as well as Luke Shaw. And that's what it comes down to. The best three United in 29 will probably be Shaw, Fernandes and Rashford. And that's why it's not popular. That's why, essentially. JP says, what is the reason for Spurs forming the Premier League but a loss in the FA Cup? Listen, we went through this last year, right? We lost at Burnley in the league. And we went, this is honest, we won at Man City on a Saturday. Then we lost at Burnley in the league. Then we won at 4-0 at Leeds in the league. Then we went to Middlesbrough and lost in the cup. Then we beat Everton 5-0. Now, the difference between this year and last year is we don't look offensively like we can do the damage that we did over that period last year. But ironically, it was properly after we lost to Middlesbrough that we really kicked into gear. And perhaps some of these upcoming fixtures will kick us into gear. But there's too many inconsistencies because there's not enough good players in that team. Bottom line reality. Hazem says no Haaland balls. I'm not saying that I'm gonna. He's referring to obviously the team I've got on screen. I cannot promise you. I'm not going to give it the big one. I can't promise you that he won't be in there. Honestly, it would be remiss of me to say that he's still very, very much under consideration. And it's because I'm not overly taken with the idea of having Harry Kane either. And I want to look at some alternative ideas tonight, and that will include looking at different ideas of having Haaland, selling Haaland, going back for Haaland, not having Haaland, buying Haaland in 30, buying Haaland in 34, which is a possibility if I start with Kane. Looking at different possibilities, and because he's important, he's absolutely important. But there is a case to say that might not be captain until 34. Just think about it logically. So obviously we've got this now, where there's a competition with Saka, particularly I think, or another alternative Arsenal player. 27, you've got the doubles for say Tony. Rashford's got Southampton at home's great fixture as well. 28 doesn't play. 29 doesn't have a double. You'll presumably want to captain a double. There's got to be something there from 12 teams that's better than Haaland at home to Liverpool. Right, game week 30 comes round and it looks better again. They go to Southampton. But there's alternatives that week. Kane's got Brighton at home. Manchester United, importantly. You've got Everton at home. So Rashford at home to Everton or Haaland at Southampton. Okay, maybe Haaland, but it's close. Like there's something to compete with there. 31 could be where the Newcastle-Brighton extra fixture goes in. And Newcastle's double, therefore, in 31 would be Villa away and Brighton at home. Now, if it's only them and Brighton doubling, I'm captain Trippier, personally. 32, the chances are he blanks. 33, he's got Arsenal at home. So it could be all the way to 34 that we don't captain Haaland. And I need to think about this because that feels too long to go without a player that's too good. But can it be done? I'd be very nervous about the Southampton-Leicester fixtures in 30-31 without him, I think, even if I wasn't going to captain him. I don't feel quite that way about the Newcastle Palace fixtures now. That would worry me 30 and 31. But I need to think about it. And I certainly need to leave the option if I decide not to go with him to at least give me the space where I can go, I need to get him back, you know. Girardin88 says, Ward, Haaland, Saka and TAA on the bench boost in 29. Hit the bench boost button, not wildcarding. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. Ward's got a decent double. Trent's got a difficult double, but you know the capability offensively. Saka and Haaland's perfectly reasonable. I think we will see teams that will bench boost in 29 with something like Ward, Haaland, Kane, Saka. I measure it 16 points, right? Let's say Ward disappoints with the double, right? Let's say it's 4 points average, right? A 1 and a 3 or 2 twos, okay? So I need 12 points from Haaland, Kane, Saka, I think, to make it worthwhile to bench boost. Say Kane scores 6. I need another 6 from Kane, Saka. The chances are I'm going to get there, aren't I? 2 returns from those 3 players with 3 decent fixtures. He's perfectly reasonable. I don't want to do it. I'd want doublers. But that's me, but it's perfectly reasonable. SK says, what's your take on the rare Estupinan versus Sanchez second Brentford defender debate, which allows fielding 11 in 28? I didn't know it was a debate, but clearly everyone's clocked onto it. Yeah, I'm more on option B, I think. As much as I'd love to have David Raya, it just makes more sense, unfortunately. Doubles further down the line for Sanchez as well. It's not just a 26, 27, 28, 29 decision, is it? Sanchez could be really useful for me later on as well. And I know Raya could be, but Brentford's fixtures are not quite so nice. in the running. I mean, one of Raya's good ones is Forest at home with 34. The other team's doubling. 32 is Villa at home. I made 3 hit. 36 have got West Ham at home. Other than that, the rest of those fixtures are rough. So over the longer term, it's probably Sanchez. Josh Tellin says, thanks for the chip pod this week, James. Very well, an absolute legend as always. Hope your boys get the result for you tomorrow and not another bad away day. I was quite depressed recording Tottenham after that chip strategy pod yesterday on Patreon. Ben Keane says, hi James, can you give us an example of a team that you would definitely not be wildcarding in the coming weeks? Thanks. If I was sitting there right now with a really nice balance, if I had sort of 5 Brighton, Brentford, and I was sitting there, I don't know, hypothetically, I was sitting there already with the likes of Watkins, Tony, decent spread of defensive players, midfield players. Perhaps I hadn't gambled heavily on Liverpool. Yeah, sure. I sent a tweet out yesterday before we recorded the pod saying, look, I want to hear from people who are not wildcarding now and get your reasoning. And people give some great reasoning. I recommend going and have a look back on that tweet. And I didn't agree with all the responses, but I don't have to. As I always say, play it your way, right? So if you're set in a nice way and you think, I don't need to do this. You know, Suj, for example, he's talking about waiting even till next week. Little things like, has he got Nico Williams at home to Everton? Like little things like that have just left him in a little bit better shape this week for this specific week than me. There was no reason to wait. But for many of you, of course, if you're not wildcarding now, you may not wildcard next week, for example. So the thing is, when I answer a question, I can't see anyone's team. And I don't know what you're planning. So this is a common thing. Someone will slide in my DMs, and I don't want to look at it, because just tag me on Twitter rather than coming in my DMs, right? It's not necessary. Let's have an open conversation so I can help other people as well. But I look at it and I can say, yeah, wildcard that or don't wildcard that. But I don't know what your plan is for the rest of the season. The decision I make tonight will have a plan all the way up to game week 37, basically. It will. Now, that plan will change across the way, but I will plan it all the way through. It's a wild card. It's till the end of the season. I don't get another one. So it's really difficult to answer those questions when you don't know what's going through the mind of other people in quite the same way. FPL Andy says, evening James, great podcast yesterday. Thank you, mate. FPL team, Peter, lifesaver. Peter's servers crashed earlier on FPL.team, but that's because the official website crashed. Honestly, mate, I'm going to be on your site all night tonight, I think, planning this out. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with FPL.team, I highly recommend you'll use it. And you can get my projections on there for 31, 34, 37 as well, in terms of where I think it will land. Just to repeat, I think 34 will be Brighton United, City West Ham, probably Liverpool Fulham, and it's probably going to be United Chelsea, Brighton Man City 37. Peter says, time to lose Mudryk, question. Was hoping he might get back in the team for 29, but bench boost, but he's looking a bit dire now. Yeah, Sterling fitness as well, mate. Yeah, I'd bin it, mate, personally. I think that's one where you can just hang on to it in the hope. And listen, he might turn good. I definitely know he's a talented player there, but I think I'd bin that at the moment. How confident would you be he started twice in 29, even if he picked up some form? Sage says, hi James, thanks for the great content. Guys, like and subscribe. Yes, smash a like, please, people. It'd be very much appreciated. Just a question. Marshall, McAllister in the long run, keeping Matoma. I'm favouring McAllister, as I've covered. Chris Jargo says, hi James, with more rotation, not just City, in the last couple of seasons, are we expecting a bit too much from the double game week players? Yeah, maybe. We always do, don't we? We always do. Listen, of the 12 teams that double in 29, 8 of them play twice in 3 days. Was you aware of that? No? Maybe you should be. So the 2 teams that have a 4-day gap are United and Brentford and West Ham Newcastle. The other 8 play Saturday and Tuesday. I go back to like the Iheanacho reference. How confident am I that Rodgers don't just go, yeah, you played at Palace, I'm going to give Daka or Vardy a run out against Villa. It's possible, isn't it? Particularly if they do well in the next couple of games and pull safe of the drop zone. So, yeah, have to factor that into your thinking. That's not to say that, we should all get West Ham players, by the way, although their double is decent. But you do know with a West Ham, a 4-day gap and 2 home games, David Moyes will probably pick a similar team. Now, the flip of that is they go to Fulham in 30, so I think they've only then got a 3-day gap. So you need to look at it both ways, right? If you take that example of Palace Villa, okay, 2 days. Then they have Bournemouth at home afterwards for Iheanacho. So then there's a 4-day gap, right? So look at it both sides and consider that. But he's like predicting the future and trying to read managers' minds for what they're going to do in 4 weeks' time. I don't know. We can overly worry about these things. I think, look, I would like to be in Game Week 29 and probably be sitting there with, say, 29 starters. And what I mean by that is 14 players with a double plus, say, a Saka or a Kane, for example. And from them 29, I'd probably be hoping for sort of 24-ish starts. Won't get 29. Just accept it. But it's the possibility, right? What if you did get 29? Or what if you did get 30? With an effective captaincy becomes 32. What if you have got 32 starters, right? Just factor that in. Let's say 32 starters and they all got you 4 points. No returns. It would have to be returns, so it'd be 2 twice before. But even that, 4 points for them is 64. 64 appearance points, basically, right? So then imagine what the possibility of the game week can be. If you get 32 starters in effect, you should start on 64 points for that double. And then it's whatever they get you in terms of returns, clean sheets, attacking returns to get you above that 64 point, right? In theory, if you've got 32 starters, you smash well over 100, in theory. Ben Edison said, should I avoid this Stupinan headache and go with Dunk? It's probably what I'm going to do, Ben. Lee Jackson says, hi James, quick question. Who's on Clash of the Correspondents next week? Great question. Thank you, mate. I should clarify, and I kept forgetting yesterday, and I did forget. But the Game Week review podcast this week won't be until Tuesday. We're going to take in the Brentford Fulham game Monday night, which I think will be particularly useful for people. But very importantly, we've got 2 Clash of the Correspondents this week, which are promised when it was announced. So we've got Tom Med and Matt Samuel doing Southampton versus Brentford. And we've got the motorway rivalry. We've got Sam Murray and McTavius doing Brighton Palace. Unfortunately, it got complicated because in my excitement, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. The only night we could work out to record the Brentford Southampton pod, partly because I'm going to Tottenham Milan on Wednesday night, is Sunday night. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to record the Brentford pod on Sunday night, put it out on Tuesday after they've played Monday night. So we're going to put Clash of Correspondents out on Monday, Southampton versus Brentford with Matt and Tom. Game Week review pod Tuesday, Sky Wednesday. Then we'll do Sam and Mig on Thursday. And then Friday, I'll probably do an Ask James stream. And I'm pretty sure we're at home next week. So I'm around for the deadline. Is it a Friday deadline next week? I don't think it is. I mean, it's a Saturday deadline. Anyway, either way, I'll be doing the deadline next week. Guppy says, any update on Shell? Do we just know he wasn't pictured? Don't need till 28, so could be kept anyway. Every time he appeared on shot during that Carabao Cup final, his face looked bigger. He got a heavy whack. So in terms of an actual injury, I'd be surprised. He's a player who historically suffered, but he hasn't this season. He's kept himself in good condition. But it could be there's a bit of blurred vision, a bit of mild concussion or something, possibly even. So I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't play tomorrow. For 28, yeah, he should be fine. Prabesh says, hi James, thinking of moving away from Kulusevski, but too tempted by Spurs fixture, who is a good replacement. Yeah, I'd sell, mate. In and around his value, Maddison, Harvey Barnes, Emi Buendia for cheaper. The Arsenal guys, if obviously you don't have. Brentford guys, not the Brentford guys, the Brighton guys. It's a shame there isn't actually any midfield options from Brentford. Otherwise, we'd probably all have one, I should imagine. Even people like St. Maximin. Back to Almiron. Tough fixture this week. Bench this week. Come on the other side. Wolves, Forest, then double. That's all right. I wouldn't discount going back for an Almiron or punting a St. Maximin at the moment. Jared Bowen, if you're feeling particularly fruity, and if you can cover 28. I think Bowen would be a lot more interesting if they played in 28. Prabish, that's what I've just done. Lee Jackson says, and the week after. There will be another 2 Clash of the Correspondents, I can tell you, prior to game week 28. Lee is specifically asking that because he's guesting on one of them. Villa versus Bournemouth with Lee and Neil, and the other one is Gary and Sean doing Chelsea versus Everton. And the plan prior to game week 29 during the international break is 1 in each week. So Leeds versus Forest with Andy and Mark, and Newcastle versus Manchester United with Si and Gary. That's the COTC plan as far as it goes at the moment, mate. Chris Briggs says, evening James, love the content. You're very welcome, mate. Thank you. Andrew Sands says, not tempted by Ian Asher, James. Oh yeah, you are. I really am. Yeah, he's gonna be close. I think Watkins, Tony are definitely going in. I can say that. I think that last striker spot is up for grabs. I have no problem. I joked to one of our patrons, Attle, early. He said, can you lend me some money? I said, I'd let you know how much I leave in. I will. I promised him I'd let him know. I mean, I can't physically give it to him, but I could end tonight with more than 10 million in the bank. I really could. And it's part forward planning and help that route back to City and Liverpool after Gameweek 29. FPL Marking Coyote says, hi James, hope all is well. Thoughts on going Maddison over Odegaard on 26? Wildcard, obviously. Yeah, I probably would. I think Maddison is far more likely to be in my squad than Odegaard. At the moment, I've got them both sitting there. But Maddison's almost definitely going in, I think. I can't see me not going with him. He's such a difference maker for him. Peter FPL.team says, don't see Pope on the dilemmas, but I have Pope away at City on Ward against Southampton. That's a fair shout. Currently on Ward, but not 100%. Do you reckon Leicester have any chance of ever getting a clean sheet again? No. Southampton are pretty pony going forward as well, don't mate? I should have factored that in, really. God, Peter, why are you not wildcarding, mate? Mudryk and Pope and Ward and I'd probably go Ward, mate. I think. But then I predicted Newcastle concede 1 and Leicester concede 2. Andrew Sands says, has Suj flipped his chip, James? No, he hasn't. I'm not saying that he won't. But when we spoke this morning, he was leaning more, I think, towards the idea of actually doing it next week. Give himself a bit more breathing space and time. And that's okay. He won't be the only one in that sort of position. And like I said, I used a couple of references where some of the shit players he had have got better fixtures this week than my shit players. Like Bueno getting injured again. It was just another problem for me. I would have started him. I would have started him against Tottenham this week. So, Joe Pickles says, were you at the Battle of the Bridge in 2016? What was your opinion of Spurs losing their heads? Wow, that's a random one. I tell you what, I'll do FPL up to 6:32 then so I can answer this. No, I wasn't there. I was in a pub, not too far from Palmer's Green. And it was a mix. I mean, the behaviour was over the top, but it was badly managed because it would easily been fixed if one of our players got sent off. I mean, how Eric Dyer at one point was on a yellow card and he just absolutely wiped Eden Hazard out and should have got sent off. I can understand the Dembele and the Lamela incidents got missed on the field at the time and stuff. But yeah, under VAR, we'd have had multiple red cards that night. It's interesting. The behaviour obviously went over the top, but also from a fan perspective, you have to remember that on the outside, Tottenham have been labelled as a soft touch for so long. So at least they showed they were going to go. You always use the expression, don't you? Go down fighting, and I mean they literally did. So mixed opinion on it. It went too far, but at least they didn't just throw in the towel meekly. They made people aware of that they were in and they cared. And I wish they'd have shown that amount of care when they went to St James's Park 2 weeks later, actually, and they got destroyed. So yeah, I mean, I don't look back on it with fondness, but it's iconic, isn't it? You'd have to say that. Oasis Safdar says, fair play for going without Haaland. Listen, again, to repeat, I'm not saying to promise that I'll do it. I think I will, but I won't promise it. And as promised, it will go on Twitter in the morning. I'm not hiding what I'll do. If Haaland's there at the end of tonight, you'll see the team tomorrow morning on Twitter and he'll be in it. Maestri18 says, hi James, thanks for all your work. Shout out to your patron. Thank you, mate. This is a great time to support the show if you want to. It's the start of the month, so you get good value for your buck. Obviously, from basic tier, you get in with the 700 other patrons, get onto our Slack community, which is great. They don't miss a trick instead of team news or leaks of information or anything. They're all over it. I don't have to do nothing. I'll let them get on with it. Obviously, you can get my planner, which has got multiple different things on it at that point as well. From intermediate tier, you can access the podcasts. There'll be 20 plus, I believe, throughout March, subject to how many days. It should be more than February. And advanced tier, I do video content every weekday for the patrons as well. which includes a regular chip talk feature. So I'll look at the idea of Gameweek 27 wildcard for advanced tier patrons next week, amongst other things. But do it if you can afford it, and do it if you want to support the show. I promise to make anybody a better FPL manager. Sheila says, thoughts on going Sanchez, Estupiñán, March as Brighton triple up. Would allow Maddison and double Arsenal midfield. Downside is no Arsenal defence, but can field 11 in 28. Haaland out. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, we've all kind of got a lot of 50-50 decisions going on here. Here's the thing, right? I'm on Wildcard as well. So I'm going to say to you, no, Sanchez, Dunk, McAllister. Because that's what I'm going with. But it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Johnny J says, hi, James. Why do you think that Dunk and Gabriel are better than Zinchenko and Estupiñán? Well, Dunk, I kind of spent most of my week leaning into because there was obviously doubts over Estupiñán. And I think that one's closer. Look, they're exactly the same value as well. And it's another one I won't promise that I don't decide to go for Estupiñán tonight. I think that international calendar does need looking at. And I think we can say that for the course of the whole season going forward, Lewis Dunk, I'm fairly certain, will play every Brighton game. Can we say that about Estupiñán for the whole way through? No, not necessarily. On Gabriel Zinchenko, close call. People got a preference for Zinchenko. That's fine. I know Bournemouth have a defensive set-piece problem. I know that Gabriel scored twice against Fulham historically. I know that Palace are weak defending set-pieces as well. I also know that Leeds are. That's Arsenal's next 4 fixtures. So that's why Gabriel. And because whoever it is isn't staying beyond that point, and probably isn't even staying as long as the Leeds game, to be totally honest. But that's why there's the Gabriel preference. Aish Warrior says, I'm on wildcard this week. Would you go for Kane, Tony and Haaland? Would you go Watkins, Tony and Haaland? I don't know. This is going to be kind of repeating what I said, but thanks for the question. I'm going to skip it because I must have covered this. Atul, who I was just speaking about, says, I have a hypothetical question for you. Say for some reason that relegation/promotion is cancelled for this year and all 20 current Premier League teams are still there. Which 3 teams would you tip to go down? Sorry. I'm not sure I understand the question. Say for some reason relegation promotion is cancelled. All 20 current Premier League teams are still there. Which 3 teams would you tip to go down? What, next season? Probably the same that I tip now. Bournemouth, Southampton, Everton. Sorry, Atul, I'm not sure I understand that, mate. VL says, what's up, James, lads? Start Gakpo or Kulusevski and Dawson or Trippier. I'd go Big Dawes over Trippier, I think, personally. But then again, I'm tipping Wolves for a clean sheet. So I've got Trippier above Dawson on the bench in dilemmas. So it's a close one. Gakpo or Kulusevski? Kulusevski will start, I should imagine. I think he will start. Gakpo's got me doubt about now, isn't there? Now that Jota's kind of in and amongst it. So I think Kulusevski, mate. Steve Jones says, hi James, just curious, what is your reason for pronouncing it Haaland rather than Haaland? I'm not sure what the correct way to pronounce it is myself, to be honest. Nah, listen, people told me before and I forget. I just call him Big Norwegian. Daniel Cullerton says, hi James, which keek would you play bench boost if you haven't got a wild card and only have 3 hit left? You obviously mean week 29. Wouldn't be any different, mate. Wouldn't be. I know there's a few looking at bench boost next week. And you should look into it. It's not going to be for me. But yeah, 29 still. Ben Edinson says, say Tony does get the ban during the season, would that benefit any Brentford player to stock to the point they're a viable asset? It may improve Mbeumo a little bit, but largely not having Tony isn't going to help. Nandish says, how likely is it a Newcastle Brighton game goes into 31? Because that decides whether I want Raya and Estupiñán or Sanchez right now. Okay, let me explain the difference here. So, at the moment, and I explained this a little bit with United City, so that there's that first impact in terms of their Europe results. But let's work on the basis they go through. So that leaves Newcastle and Brighton available for 30, 31, 35 or 36. So it's 4 weeks. So your probability for any of those weeks is 25%. Now, I think there's a number of reasons why 31 should be higher. I think the time from the announcement makes it better than 30. So does the spacing. I can't see the spacing in the fixtures between 35 36, so I can't use that as a reason. But it seems to make more sense to me rather than having Brighton have 3 doubles in 4 game weeks at the end of the season. So let me answer it like this, and I think this is the only honest way I can answer it. is 31 is the most likely, but it's less than 50%. That's I think that's the only way I can answer it. I don't know how to measure that. That would be one for the algorithm guys to try and measure that. And I imagine they'd probably come up with probably a similar answer at the moment. But in terms of like a percentage weightage, I wouldn't know how to do that. I can tell you that it's more than 25%, but in terms of just basic options, it's less than 50. Daniel Cullerton says, I can do 3 more minutes of FPL, guys. Daniel Cullerton says, also, Sky question, best Paulini replacement, only 0.2 in the bank, not against making a couple of changes if budget is an issue. Consider Morgan Gibbs White, as I said on Wednesday's podcast, if you're in that position. Josh 14X says, hi James, currently in turmoil trying to choose between McAllister and Mitoma to go alongside March. Feels like one could really burn the other depending on Brighton playing a 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1. That I'm probably going McAllister, mate. That's it. But I think all 3 are very good options. I don't think it's, I've got to go McAllister. This is the decision I've made. It's the decision I've had in my mind for a couple of weeks. I'm not going to change it. Now, maybe that's me being a bit stubborn like that. But that's the decision I've had in mind for a while. So, McAllister for me. Guppy says, any idea of Areola tends to underperform or overperform? I presume that should be as a goalkeeper. You mean in terms of against save, XG, shot? I have no idea. I think he's a decent goalkeeper, and I think he's a decent option if you want to get someone in who's going to sit on the bench and be a bench booster goalkeeper for you. I think that's fine. I think if you're looking for anything beyond that, no. Ben says, is March interchangeable for Mitoma on your bench dilemmas? Would you start him over Henry if not? Oh yeah, just replace them in the same way, mate. I mean, literally, it's that difficult to split them. Andrew Sands says, one of the problems with sacking Potter is who did Chelsea get? The pool of proven and desirable managers is getting smaller and smaller. Ian Actor says, hi James, quality content as per. Thoughts on the goalkeeper situation? Best combo between Pope, Raya, Sanchez, Kepa. It's highly likely to be Sanchez Kepa for me. I am going to look at different ideas with Raya and Pope because I'm conscious of 31 possibly. I'm going to look at all of that tonight. I think it will be Sanchez and Kepa for me. Arabia says, who to bench? Grealish against Newcastle, Darwin against United. I see no reason why Grealish won't play. I think I'd play Darwin, you know. Yeah, I'd play Mr. Chaos, I think, though. Grealish is despite the starts, the returns aren't really coming. And obviously in Kieran Trippier will be up against an opponent who will know his style very well. Asif says, strategy question. With De Zerbi now banned from the sidelines for Gameweek 26, is he? I didn't know that. Does it make more sense to delay the wildcard to 26, but we still have one less free transfer in 29, correct? I presume you meant to say delay to 29 at 7. You delay a wildcard strategy because the manager's not on the bench. Did it stop Tottenham beating Man City and West Ham, the fact that Antonio Conte wasn't there? I mean, there's overthinking and he'll still pick the team. Vinny Stone says, James, thank you for keeping me sane during this wildcard period. You're very welcome, mate. And last one I'm going to do, Gav James says, hi James, thanks for the Chip podcast on a wildcard and it was life-saving. Only bit left is who to bench out, Mitoma, McAllister, Odegaard and Rashford this week. Currently on McAllister. Yeah, toss a coin between McAllister and Mitoma. I think on that one, I probably would play Mitoma over McAllister purely on the I know where Mitoma will play. I know he'll play left wing, whereas McAllister could play deep. And if I made that choice and regretted it, if McAllister plays high and outscores Mitoma, I go, okay, accept that. So actually from that, probably this week would probably bench McAllister. And listening to my own words and thinking to myself, James, should you be reconsidering this? Right, I'm not going to do any FPL because I've done about an hour on it and it's going to get quite repetitive. If you came just for the FPL, please smash a like on your way out, hit a sub button and all that. And I'll be back with Tom and Matt for COTC on Monday. So you'll be with me for the Gameweek review on Tuesday. A reminder, if you'd like to support the show, www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. If anybody's got any non-FPL questions, throw them in the chat now, and I'm happy to cover them off for about 10 minutes or so. Vinny Stone says, which Brentford player have you got on the bench, James? I will assume that it's probably not readable because it might be a bit small, but it is Rico Henry that's there. That's highly likely to be the preferred option, but it might be that I don't go for any. It is possible. If I go down that route, it might be that Raya comes back in for me and I just go for 2 Brighton. That's something that's very much under consideration. But yeah, now's the time if you've got any non-FPL questions. Just to cover off our Patreon podcast next week. Be Q&A Monday, Tuesday, probably be UCL Fantasy, I should imagine. It's got to be. It's UCL this week, James. We're looking obviously at planning for the second legs for that. I'm in and around the top 1,000 in UCL Fantasy at the moment. Much better than I am in FPL, put it that way. Wednesday will be Tottenham, although I might delay it till Thursday again, considering we play Milan Wednesday night. Quiz as well. Friday will be our Gameweek 27 preview show. Chris Duckworth says, "Hi James, have you been to the Bet365 Stadium? What is it like as an away day? Just booked my tickets for Rovers match there next Friday." It's alright. Stadium's okay. Bit windy. It's kind of up on a hill and it's open to the side where the away fans is. So I've been a couple of times. And I was much more in when I went in April and it was still not that warm. But to be honest, when I went the first time, it was when, do you remember when Bale scored that goal and he hit it like at shoulder height? I was there for that one. And it was a really nice warm day actually. But yeah, you got farmed on a bus from, we had a drink near the train station. And it's like a park and ride bus that takes you to the stadium because it's like well out of the city stadium, like city centre. It like goes back on the motorway. That's the best way if you're not going by car yourself. The first time we went, my dad drove up, so we parked quite near the stadium. So there's no pub next to the ground as such. I think right near kickoff there is, but I don't think it's one for away fans as such. So it's drink near the train station. You get on this bus from, I think it's the university campus if I remember correctly, takes you to the stadium. But yeah, the stadium's alright. Stoke's okay. They're a decent lot. If they're doing well, they met a decent atmosphere, and if they're not, they don't, basically. Greenback Soccer says, James, next year you want Poch back if Conte quits. Oh, God. Look, I think it's beginning to look increasingly likely that Pochettino probably will be returning as top manager in the summer. It's difficult to answer. It's difficult to answer because I reflect on Wednesday night and many of the other away games I've been to this season, and I just think this is such fucking lifeless shit. It's crap. It's nothing. It's tactical structure. It's defensive solidity first. There's no expression in the play. When we were at our best last spring, when Kulusevski and Bentancur got in the team, it was like we suddenly played with expression and freedom. We don't seem to have it now. Part of that is Bentancur being missing, by the way. But Kulusevski's not playing to the same level. And I already I'm going to Wolves tomorrow. I already know it's going to be shit, basically. Like, I'll be so happy to sit here on a review on Tuesday and go, fucking hell, we won 3-0 at Wolves. We played really well. But I just don't see it. I feel like that game tomorrow is probably like first goal wins. And whoever gets it probably wins. Or it will end 0-0 or 1-1. Like, I don't see it being a thriller. I know that they're going to have more of the ball. Wolves are going to have more of the ball. Got a player in midfield, Ruben Neves, walks into our team. And I know it's going to be a struggle. And yet, we're fourth in the league, right? So it's like he's potentially on to still finish as a good season somehow, despite the fact we've been so bang average. It's primarily because of Harry Kane's performances, right? But at the same time, as much as I think, obviously loved the spell under Poch, he's my favourite Tottenham manager. We played some brilliant stuff. I think going back to him would be a mistake. I really do. There's still players there, including Kane, including Eric Dyer and other players, Hugo Lloris, who let him down previously. And I think it's a mistake. I really do. I'm concerned that he and himself, in his last 9 months at Tottenham, it was a disaster. We won one away game in 9 months. Unbelievably, I was in Amsterdam for it. Incredible. Actually, that's a lie. We won 2 because we also won in Dortmund. Yeah, those are the 2 away games. All comps we won in 9 months. Dortmund and Ajax. Go figure. It was terrible. Everything evolved to become way too tactical. And basically, Mauricio Pochettino's Tottenham without Moussa Dembele was a fucking car crash. Unless someone can repair Moussa Dembele's hip or get me back Luka Modric for a couple of years, I'm very concerned about what his team will look like. And I think there's every chance it might not be wildly different from now, except we might be a bit worse defensively. And I think we should be looking in a different direction. That's my honest take. If Poch comes back, I'm not going to be disappointed because I love him. And it will mean a lot to us as fans. But I think it will be a mistake. Addy Tour says, who will be more miserable during the Chelsea-Everton clash to correspondence, do you think? Oh, Sean. Oh, Sean. Subject to what Everton do against Forest and Brentford in the next couple, but probably Sean. Listen, it's obviously terrible for Chelsea, but life goes on. They'll spend some more money. There's way more at stake for Everton right now, isn't there? GW26 says, is Emerson Royal a nailed-on starter in that Spurs squad? I don't think we can say nailed-on starter. Like, will he start tomorrow? Yes, definitely. There's no doubt about that. But future weeks, don't know. As I said previously, I haven't spent 40 million on Pedro Porro just to have him sit on the bench forever. So, right now, based on what I've seen from Porro at Leicester, and he wasn't bad at Sheffield United. But what I've seen from him in the 2 games so far is absolutely no doubt that not only will Emerson Royal play, but he should play. And I want him to play. So at the moment, yeah, how long that lasts for, I have no idea, mate. FPL Lad says, is Bet365 Stoke Stadium? If so, not great. Out of town, the town centre doesn't have much to offer either. Harsh. Just get off the train, have a drink, get on a bus, go to the ground, piss off, go home. Yeah, I suppose there's better days out in cities. Super Tiger says, thoughts on the Romero interview about the Spurs medical department saying he'd missed the World Cup, but the Argentina doctor said they were wrong. My thoughts are, go and have a look at Christian Romero's tweet that he sent out a couple of hours ago. This is what happens when things get interpreted and read differently. So there's nothing in it, mate. Ben Eddington says, Moise Caicedo just agreed a new deal with Brighton. Is this just more leverage for Brighton, or do you still see him leaving? It's release clause in the contract, mate. That's literally what I think every time a new player signs a contract. I think we learnt that from the Grealish one, didn't we? Grealish signed a new contract at Villa. Villa went, all right, we get 100 million, you go. It was a great deal for Villa, right? Let's be honest. 100 million for Grealish. Villa got a great deal out of that as well. They just didn't spend that money great, to be totally honest. So, yeah, it could well be signed a new contract and Brighton have gone, fine, 80 million, something like that. I have no idea. But, yeah, I don't read too much in it. It's leverage for Brighton, but it's possibly leverage for the player as well. Craig Boy Crooks says, top 5 players you'd like to have a dinner party with, alive or dead? Gaza, got to be in there. Deadly. I think Harry. I think I would want Harry there. Kane, obviously. And then we need to spice it up a little bit more, don't we? Would you want Gaza and Neil Ruddock in the same place? It's a good question. Ali McQuest to come with Gaza, because Ali McQuest tells great stories about him and he could look after him. And I'd want someone from that Pochettino team, really. I'm going to say Musa, the doctor. How did he do it? How did he just used to give him the ball. He just never lose the ball. So I used to have control. He could be in so much shit. Give Musa the ball. He'd still have it 20 seconds later. Oh, dear. Nishan says, why do you think United will beat Liverpool at Anfield? Because they're much stronger in midfield. That's it. I think if you look at the team lineups, 1 to 11, what I expect, I think Konate playing is a big boost for Liverpool. There doesn't look like a lot in it between the two teams. But then, and I look at it on paper and I think, should I really think United win? And then Liverpool ain't played nothing on paper this year, right? I just think they get dominated in midfield. I think United are more streetwise than Liverpool now. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's how I feel. So, can Liverpool beat them? Yeah, of course, especially at Anfield, right? It's probably the first time I've tipped Liverpool to lose a home game in years, I imagine. I might never have done a deadline stream before and predicted Liverpool to lose at home. If I have, it's not happened often. It can only have been against Man City. It wouldn't have been against anybody else, honestly. So that's a rarity for me to predict that they'll get beat at home. Super Tiger says, Leicester away was the sausage roll. What's the Wolves highlight for an away fan? Not getting the shit beaten out of you. Leaving. getting out of there. Wolves is all right. It's okay. I went up twice last year, going up again. We'll meet Bradley Parker before the game and stuff. Bradley's got a nice little spot for something to eat and a drink and that. So that's nice. It's a nice walk to the ground and stuff. Shit view on the lower tier, but it wouldn't matter what seat I have. You got the same. You get all that bottom tier on the side. It's all right. There's worse ones than Wolves. There's a lot of Gregs in Wolves. I know that from historical. Patrick Gourdart says, reasoning behind your Everton Forest prediction. I can't give one. I can't give one. I can a little bit. I think, I've said this a few times recently, I think Everton will keep, at times between now and the end of the season, they'll have Burnley days, like Burnley used to have, and you'll be like, I can't believe they've kept a clean sheet there. And I think this might be one where with the fixtures Forest have coming up afterwards, Tottenham, Newcastle, be real pressure to win it. And if they don't, it's sucked back right in. And Everton will know if they win it, it sucks them right back in. And I don't think Forest are that miles better than Everton. I think that Forest have got clear defensive issues. Forest are essentially, if Loddy's out and Aurier isn't back, essentially, and obviously Henderson's still out as well, essentially, you can make a debate, Navas versus Henderson. But let's at least say the back four is all second choice. Can Everton possibly, from a set piece or something, take advantage of that and defend well? Like, is Chris Wood a major problem for Everton? No, he's probably a good matchup for the likes of Cody/Keane and Tarkowski. It's more about the movement of Gibbs White and Johnson's the problem. But if they can keep that quiet, yeah, I think they can win. Is it that logical to predict Nottingham Forest lose a home game? It would be sod's law. It's how football works. Forest don't lose at home for 6 months. Everton go down and win. These sort of mad stories happen sometimes. And I just wanted to go rogue. Why not? Is there logic in it? A little bit, but not a lot, I'll be honest. Darko Tarandex says, hi James, how many different stadiums have you visited approximately? Good luck, love your shits podcast. I really should. I get asked this question a bit. I really should get round to counting them. But I think we'd worked out it's now about, I think it's probably just 5 in the top 2 divisions, I think. So that's what, 43. It's probably about half of League 1, a bit more in League 2 and stuff. Trips abroad and stuff. It's got to be 70 plus, probably. It's not like that amazing a number, but it's probably got to be 70 plus, I suppose. Away says, thoughts on Keylor Navas, James? Does he keep his place when Henderson is back? Henderson's still a few weeks away. I can only refer back to what Mark Southern said on COTC a few weeks back. That he thought that Navas would probably keep the place to the end of the season. He knows his team better than me. So, Addy Tour says, if you could ask Pep one question, what would it be? Wow. I mean, there's so many different directions you could take that in terms of... My instinct is to ask him about the Barcelona team in some way. Maybe like when he started, did he realise how blessed he was straight away? What did he do? Maybe even what did he regret? Was there stuff that he regretted at Bayern Munich, maybe? I'd probably be more interested in the historical stuff than what's next. Because I think you're more likely to get a true answer. If I said to him now, hey Pep, why have you suddenly decided to go 3-2-4-1 and fuck things about and do something different? I don't think that's the question properly. I might get an honest answer on something about Barca buying. That would be my take. Audran says, Chip Pod was godlike today. Listen to you today. Best in the business. Thank you. Appreciate it. Prabesh says, is Tony definitely playing? Bit late, so apologies if you've already gone through this topic. I don't see why he wouldn't. Sweet Blues says, is that Wolves goal tomorrow in the 1-0 going to be scored by Diego Costa? No, it's going to be scored by Craig Dawson, mate. John Walker says, is Navas an option on Wildcard if you only want him for this double game on a bench boost? In closing, yes, possibly. I shall end the stream there, guys. Smash the like, hit the sub button on your way out. Remember, particularly if you're wildcarding, play it your way. Don't be too influenced by others. By all means, absorb the content that you want to. But remember to make your own decisions at the end. I've got to make my own decisions. You'll have to do the same. And for those just generally playing the game week, obviously, very best of luck. As ever, play it your way. Have a great weekend. And for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, cue music, please, man child.